Hey guys, I'm James Hall with Bassmaster Magazine here with John Jones and the Lochow Ranch Pond Management Group.
Yep,
out
got
of
it.
Lake Y. We're out at Lake Y doing some work. And this is, don't tune out because this is not going to be like the most titillating visual, but the concepts we're going to discuss right now are vital to lake management, and that is, we're going to discuss catastrophe. And I'm going to say catastrophe because if you're a pond owner, small lake owner, if something goes awry in your lake and you lose all your fish, it is like a natural disaster of the heart.
Oh yeah,
and of the lake. So we've actually gone through a couple of those, what I consider potential catastrophes this year at Lake Y, one of which was a flood. It was like a 10-year flood. It came through here. This dock we're standing on was about a foot underwater. The spillway that we've looked at earlier in earlier videos, it had 3, maybe 4 feet of water going over it. The current was crazy. And all I could picture when we were out here seeing that water go over that spillway is, there goes my fish! There goes my fish!
And you were right.
Oh, no, don't say that. So let's talk about flood as far as our first topic of catastrophe. What does a flood do to a body of water like this, or to a body of water like the folks might have at home that you would consider a negative impact?
Well, it has a lot of impacts, obviously. The first is you're flushing the lake with new water, maybe water you want, maybe water you don't want. A lot of times it's bringing nutrients from the watershed up from your lake, maybe not desirable in the quantities that you're getting, can cause algae blooms and phytoplankton crashes and all sorts of things like that. If you've amended your water, which we have not done it yet, we've discussed it, but one of the reasons we haven't is because of flooding. If you've amended the water and improved your pH and alkalinity and hardness to where it'll accept a quality bloom, flood takes that downstream, and that can be a little bit rough. A small flood, generally speaking, is not going to cause too many problems. Most game fish species swim upstream. The smaller fish, the bluegill and bass, when they're tiny, generally will go with the current, but most of the fish go upstream. When you get big currents in a flood like you're talking about, you can lose a lot of your bigger sport fish, and that can be heartbreaking. Maybe good for your neighbor, but not good for you.
I don't care about my neighbor.
Yeah, I know, but that makes managing kind of riverine type lakes really, really tricky. This is not, to get a fluke flood is to be expected on something like this. And I always say, if you're going to grow big fish, you want to have no catastrophes, no accidents. You want to do boring things for 10 years. But Mother Nature pretty much without fail will make sure that doesn't happen. So, a flood is one. It's one that we all can recognize, but some of the other ones are a little bit more subtle and can actually cause more problems.
Yeah, and so the opposite side of that flood issue that we had, that was scary, was then we were followed up earlier this year by 45, 50 days of no water, no rain whatsoever. And so then it became drought-like. The water here dropped to its lowest point I've ever seen, probably 3 feet lower than we're seeing it right now. So when you're talking about lake management and drought, how bad is that on a fishery?
Well, in some ways it could be beneficial. So a seasonal drought can concentrate the bait fish, pull them away from the structure and expose them to predation. You can get some really fat bass. You'll see that in Texas lakes down on the border that experience extreme variations in water level. In a private lake, probably the biggest problem with a minor drought is it will cause weeds to grow in water that typically it's not growing. So you could end up with a very, very thick amount, or very thick base of weeds in a lake, and that's probably the primary problem with a minor drought. A big drought, obviously, when you get down to 3 or 4 feet of water and a lot of weed cover and that sort of thing, you're probably going to have a fish kill, especially in the summer.
That would be so sad. All right, so that's you have the flood, you have the drought. The other thing that we experienced here this past winter was the devil bird, as I call it. Other people call it cormorants. But there are bird issues, and the cormorants, as I understand, can do great damage to a bait fish population and bring disease and other things. What do you see as far as devastation of cormorants or pelicans or other birds of that nature?
The cormorants are a hot button issue for a variety of reasons in the aquaculture industry and for endangered species on the West Coast. They're certainly causing problems with salmon, smolt, and that sort of thing. In private waters, they mainly hit your bait fish, and on average they eat about 2 pounds of bait per bird per day. And so
Holy mother.
put a retail value of $25 a pound on your bait, and that's $50 a bird a day,
See,
going away.
devil birds. That's
Yeah, there you
awesome.
go. It's fair. It's fair. Pelicans, it's my experience that while they do eat bait, they can also herd the medium-sized bass and are more likely to eat a little bit larger fish. Generally, they're a problem in bigger lakes. We don't see them as often in smaller lakes. Of course, both birds are protected, so there's not a whole lot you can do about them, but they can really wreak havoc on a fishery.
We can't try to scare them away, and that's something I'm sure that we recommend doing. If you have a cormorant problem, you try to do anything you can to get them off your body of water.
Yes, I think deterring them from your body of water is perfectly legal, but with non-lethal means.
Yeah. All right, another really big one, especially in this area in Texas, are otters. And now, although we haven't seen with our eyes any otters on Lake Y, there's likely some here. And
we saw it on your data sheet today. I know
Okay.
you have otters.
Okay.
And you're not unique in that place. Okay.
All right, well, tell me why otters are so bad and what can you do about that?
Well, first off, we like otters. Okay, they're a nice, smart animal. They're a sign of a healthy ecosystem.
Pretty cute.
But by building the ponds and lakes that we have across the nation, we've artificially inflated their numbers by providing them a lot of places to eat. And they've now got to a number that I consider detrimental to most fisheries. We see, again, these are rough numbers, but an otter will eat about 7 pounds of fish per day and can kill up to 28 pounds of fish per day.
That makes cormorants sound like sweethearts.
Well, it's true. I don't even say the word cormorant anymore since I've been dealing with otters. But, probably a bigger problem is that you can always buy more or grow more bait. But if you've been growing a bass for years and years and it's killed, well, it's gone. And you do that a few times, it can be very frustrating to manage a lake where otters are a problem.
And so trapping otters perfectly legal.
Absolutely, yep.
And that's something that you highly recommend. I know I've seen otters decimate. I mean, just destroy bass fisheries. So, what are some of the signs for those people watching at home that you may have an otter problem?
First off, I just assume you do have an otter problem. Wherever you are,
You got one.
I just assume it. First, they're nocturnal. They're pretty sneaky. They travel large areas. They're more like a mountain lion than something that lives in a small area like a jackrabbit. With a large range like that, they may only stay at your lake for a few days. Again, a family of 5 otters killing 10 or 20 pounds of fish per otter per day doesn't take very long to really work over some of your bigger fish. Signs, a lot of times you'll look over the dam and you'll find a trail where they go over. They have some pretty interesting habits where they follow the same trails. They leave piles of scat and the bones and things. They're called toilets, and again, if we look hard enough, we'll be able to find them along your dam, probably upstream where the creek goes to the next lake. And certainly the islands. Otters love islands. But most of the time, you're not going to see the otter. Sometimes you may notice some fish with their bellies eaten out. That's usually a sign of otters. How we see otters is usually on the data sets. We can see very, very quickly if an otter's been encroaching on your bass numbers.
Okay, so those are, what are some other, now those are the issues that we've had here at Lake Y.
Oh, you still got more to have. That's
I
no
know,
problem.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. Why don't you go ahead and roll through a couple of other concerns that our viewers may have or run into in managing lakes that could be catastrophic.
Okay, well, we'll just say a fish kill. Okay, a fish kill is a general term, encompasses a lot of things. But that rain, that flood, if your lake was deeper, you could have had a turnover, and everybody's heard of a turnover. And at the wrong time of year, that can kill your lake. It's an oxygen depletion event. Heartbreaking. I mean, I've been around hundreds of fish kills, and you never get used to it. It's horrible. You can have toxic algae blooms, whether that's a blue-green bloom or a golden algae bloom. Both of those can kill some or all your fish. Golden algae being pretty much a lights out sort of thing, and blue-green being somewhat treatable. Those are pretty horrible to see. 100% weed coverage. This one's a slow, sneaky color. You might have weeds and they get worse and they get worse and get worse and have a lot of vegetation out there. You're feeling pretty good about it. You're fishing the edges, but at a certain point, there's too many weeds in your lake, and the amount of oxygen they produce is offset by the amount they take up at night. And when you get too heavy a load of plants, you can have a fish kill. And you may not ever see those fish. They may die a little bits here, a little bit there, or die underneath the mats and sink. But certainly that's a common way to lose fish. I'd say the most unexpected is the turnover. That'd be very unlikely here because your lake's so shallow. But it's the most devastating because you could do everything right, and all it takes is one cold rain one night, and you're back to square one.
Well, you depressed me thoroughly.
No, no problem. My kids are always going to have shoes.
But it's important. It's important to understand what can happen, so you can kind of prepare and take action and do things that might prevent some of these catastrophes from happening.
Absolutely. You can stave off most of those. You can stave off a turnover by having an aeration system. You can stave off a blue-green algae treatment by doing, or blue-green algae kill by doing proper treatments. You can work on the predators. You're never going to eliminate Mother Nature, but you can mitigate the impacts of those type of things. Floods, not so much. If you try to keep your fishing with fences and things, you could end up hurting your dam, and you certainly don't want to do that. A drought, you can pump supplemental water. So there are ways to mitigate every one of these, but generally you want to identify as it's happening and not wait to your point of no return and then try to fix it. That rarely works.
Right. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. There's a lot of things to consider when taking on this kind of passion projects, but they're all fun. It's kind of like chess, with Mother Nature. You're probably never gonna beat her, but hopefully, you don't let her kill you in the meantime.
Exactly. Oh, you just got to work with.
Right.
You got to work
Work
with. You
Mama.
got to understand what's likely going to be your problems and work around it.
Right. All right. Very good. Well, that's it, guys. Y'all stick around or check out some of the other Lake Y videos or the features in Bassmaster magazine, and we'll catch you next time.